Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Know-How is brought to you by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
On this episode of Know-How, how to quiet your computer, a little bit about thin clients, quadcopters, oh, and by the way, it's time for the first flight. It's the Twitch show where we build, bend, break, and upgrade. I'm Father Robert Ballecer.
And I'm Brian Burnett, and this is episode 123.
That's right. We have been told by our producer that this is momentous because it's episode 1, 2, 3.
And that's it.
Yeah. That's
cool.
That's all right.
We have nothing special prepared for that.
Nothing about that other than the fact that he had a graphic he really wanted to play.
Yeah. Much so welcome to episode 123 on this exciting best open ever.
Best open ever. All right, now today we've got a very for the last 11 weeks where we've been showing you how to build up a quadcopter from scratch. Today we're actually going to make you put it up in the air. We're going to give you some of the steps to make sure that you can fly it safely, and then we're going to move on. I mean, we're not done with quadcopters, right, but this is sort of the end of this first beginner's arc.
Well, you definitely want to do
the more kill your neighbor size, and you need to have your stuff down before you put one of these into the air. But before we do that, you know, we've actually got a little shout out to history.
To history?
History.
Is it because of this historic 123 episode of ours?
Yes. Well, one of the numbers we're talking about F1 racing.
F123?
No.
I'm gonna. Thank you.
It's gonna get a lot of mileage out of that graphic. I actually have become a fan of F1 racing again because of Tim Stevens. He kind of got me back into it. I did have watched a couple of events. I'm actually on the schedule to go watch an event live.
Oh, really?
I love the tech,
yeah,
and I like what they've done with it, but some of the history is absolutely fascinating. Like, for example, when you think of an F1 car, what do you generally think of the design? What does it look like? This actually wasn't just one team that was trying to do this. There were multiple teams. In fact, Ferrari side by side in front of each other, smaller wheels, but for drive wheels.
That sounds so strange, thinking about it.
It didn't work out so well. I mean, both of those teams killed the designs before they made it to tires for the back, but then they used 4 tires up front for steering.
That sounds really strange.
It's a lot. And Alex, I think you actually have you've got a link there to what this thing looks like. It looks like someone took a regular F1 car and said, "Oh, I'm just gonna chop it right here."
Shrink the front wheels.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, this is called the P34. It made its debut in 1976. Now, in theory, it could have been great, and it actually did okay. When it was released in 1976, it had 10 podium finishes.
Dang.
I know.
But what was its not maintenance, but it's...
The drawback was the fact that it also failed a lot. So it had 10 podium finishes, but it also had 8 withdrawals.
Ouch.
Yeah. Smaller tires. And because they're spinning so fast, you would burn the brakes out in no time.
Yeah, man. And I mean, the 70s, that was the era of like the scary horsepower without like all these. It's just too silly.
This is stupid. But you know how F1 works. They don't want any one team
yes,
Red Bull was running last year.
Right.
This year, they're probably going to do the same thing for that split turbo. The BMW engine that competed back in the 80s was 1.5 liters turbo and produced 1,300 horsepower.
Jeez.
You would need 6 tires for that, right?
I think
big tires, regular size tires.
I want like tractor tires out there.
And I want them like on a pivot so that
rotate over. Yeah. Oh.
No, we're making fun of this, but can you imagine what they could do with
simulations?
Right. I mean,
really crunch the numbers.
Kind of cool, maybe.
Maybe.
It's like Monster Truck F1.
What about Destruction Derby F1?
No.
El
Drisi.
What is that, you think?
I don't know. But he's an awesome fan.
When you say
so
it,
read
sounds Italian. So his question is he's getting fans, and he's wondering what we would recommend for an efficient fan, but as quiet as possible. So it sounds like he wants to, what? Why are you making that face?
Just for matter of correction.
Did I say something weird?
It's a for you case, not an FU case.
Did I say? Yeah, you know,
An FU
it's one of
case
those FU cases. Hate those things.
Okay, it's cool. It's cool. Actually, this is a great question because I do hear this a lot. People say
I prefer the FU case.
that's what he's got. It's got so many fans. It's loud, right? And we've all seen that. We have a case and we try to tuck it away. In fact, that's why we like that Acer Predator so much because it is so quiet.
Oh right.
Yeah, but the question is, once you have an FU case, how do you make it quiet?
I think I was thinking back to the first case I bought for the build I did. It was an Antec silent one, and they put all this foam inside of it. It wasn't that quiet, and I ended up tearing it all out of the case, and I said, "FU case."
I did that. I mean, I remember because that foam used to be really expensive, and, and you would buy it in kits, and you could put them. I would put it like the inside and the outside of the case, and it helped a tiny bit.
Right,
but then it screwed up all the thermal dissipation because now your case has become essentially a thermos.
Exactly.
Which it was awesome. It was awesome.
The temps were all over the place.
Yeah. Now there are a few things that you can do, but here are a few things to remember. One, slower is quieter.
Right.
That's just how it works. The faster you spin a fan, the more noise it's going to make. It's simple, physics. The second thing is that bigger blades can spin more slowly
and still pump out the same amount of air
as a faster fan, right? Because you've got more space, which means it's deflecting more air.
This kind of follows into our propeller talks that we've done with the quadcopters.
Right, like you could spin this really slowly, or spin one of these 8-inchers really fast and get the same amount of lift. It's the same thing with a fan. You could either spin a big one slowly, or you can spin a small one very quickly. But if you're going for quiet, you want the bigger one. The last one is that ball bearings tend to last longer and be more quiet than sleeve bearings. So the sleeve bearings are basically just plastic sleeves.
Oh, right.
And they work, but over time they wear and then you get noise.
I've never, when I'm buying fans, I don't think I've ever seen one specify if it was ball bearings or not.
That's the problem. It's really hard to know. Even the ones that are ball bearing fans, they don't normally label them as ball bearing fans, so you kind of have to figure it out. That last one, it's difficult to implement if you actually want to do it. Now, what I would suggest is instead of getting a super expensive ball bearing fan or speed controllers, just maybe look into getting something like this.
That's a very big fan.
Yeah, so this is a 12-incher. This is kind of nice. This actually lights up if you were to plug it in. This is for our oil PC project. This is actually going to go in the tank, and it's going to push the oil around the tank.
And all you'll need is that one, probably.
Just one fan. Now, the nice thing about this is I can basically rotate this about that fast. And it will still push as much air as one of those smaller, tiny little fans, which means you're almost not going to hear this.
Right, and it'll probably last longer, you think?
And it will last longer. Yeah. So if you've got a case, if you've got that 4U case, and you do want to get it a bit more quiet, look into getting something like this. This is a Cooler Master. We'll put the link up in the show notes. I actually got this on special from Tiger Direct. It was something like $5 and had a $5 rebate. So look for these deals, and when they come up, get yourself a couple of sets, so that if you do have a project you want to cool down, you can just go big or go home.
Bill Hicks in the chat room points out it's your biggest fan.
It's that kind of an episode.
It's gonna be. Yeah. It's episode 1, 2, 3, folks. Who knows what's gonna happen?
All right, go to number 2. My goodness.
All right, number 2 comes from Jason Perry. He was just watching a BYB, and they did a review on the Acer Chromebox. Is it bad that his first thought was that it would make a great thin client?
First of all, Jason, yes, it is horrible.
It is bad.
You're a bad person. No, seriously though, that's actually what they were built for. I mean, they don't market it like that, but essentially a Chromebox is what we would have called a thin client 10 years ago in the enterprise, 20 years ago in the enterprise. The idea is if you're going to be using what we now call virtual desktop infrastructure. So you use a network connection to
VDI?
VDI.
I think I've heard VDI on Twit before.
Yeah, well, you TD it now. So. but if you've got a lot of computing power in a data center somewhere, you could access that computing power and run all your applications, maybe even run games. Remember there used to be a video game service that you could deliver?
Was it OnLive?
OnLive, right. Yeah. That was essentially thin clienting, because the box on the other side, all it has to do is display the information. It doesn't really have to do any processing other than user input and output to screen.
That's cool.
Yeah. Now, these have become actually incredibly popular for that, because you can put this into situations where you want something quiet, you want something very power efficient, and maybe you want something that you're not worried about it getting stolen. For example, on a thin client like this, I'm not really storing anything on the box.
Right.
So if someone were to steal this, they wouldn't get all my documents.
No, that's just kind of the
databases.
controller for everything.
It's just the controller. So that's the thin client idea. In fact, I'd say if you know what a thin client is and you're using it as a thin client, kudos for you, because you're ahead of most of the game.
And these are really relatively cheap, right? These are a couple $100.
Yeah, well,
What?
okay. Chrome boxes right now are a little, they're weird. We don't know why they're pricing the way they, when this one came out, so this one I got from a Google I/O, like, what?
It's not even
3
out of
years
the
ago?
plastic
It's not
yet.
out of the plastic. I like
Still
used it
smells
once.
fresh.
But I think they were trying to sell this thing for like $800.
What?
And it was, you know, I was like, well, I could buy a full power desktop for that.
Right. I mean, the specs on what are the specs on it? This has an i5. I mean, how much RAM has it?
Not a whole lot. It wasn't a great box.
It's got a lot of USB ports.
Yeah. So this was sort of like the in-between generation. The newer ones all use like Atom processors, which are perfect for displaying data, but you don't need to, you know, have a heavy processor or memory to essentially display a web browser.
Right. Okay. Well,
So there you go, Jason. Good job. You're not wrong. Thin client all the way.
you're not bad for thinking that either.
Yes, you are.
You're a kid. Oh.
You know why?
Why?
Because it's episode 123.
That's right. Yes, it is.
Let's move on.
The next question comes from Yob. Yob. Sorry, I was reading the second. I was reading the last name before.
Yob Resta. Thank you, Yob
Rob
Resta.
Yesta.
Okay.
Padre, on today's know-how, you said the show notes would include updated parts list for the 230 and 250. What about the 450? I like to build a 450 and add my GoPro for video. The 450 on the show looked clean and simple with the GoPro.
Rob, yes, actually, this is my Alien X. This is the larger quadcopter that I build when I want to do GoPro video, because it's nice and stable. It's a 450 class, but as you can tell, it's kind of stretched a little bit, right? So it's not like the square quadcopters where every prop was equidistant from every other
Right.
prop, adjacent. This one is slightly pulled forward. These are slightly pulled back. It gives it a more stable platform for when I want to do, shooting with the GoPro.
Right.
Now, you're right. We did not put the parts list, but here's the cool thing. No matter if you're building a 250, a 230, or 450, all of our parts lists basically come up to the same price.
That's cool.
That's cool, right, exactly. So you just choose the set of components that are going to work for you. Now, this frame is, I actually got this from Amazon. It's about $16.99. This is the newer X-Alien quadcopter frame. It comes with a clean plate. So this clean plate actually has little rubber dampeners.
That's what I was looking at. That looks really neat. And that helps it so it doesn't, jiggle.
Yeah, so even if your quad is jiggling, it will keep the video from jelloing.
Yeah.
You
You don't want to just strap it straight to the frame, because then all the vibration gets transferred to it.
And it ends up looking really bad, really kind of jank. That's the frame. So that's and it's it's $16.99. It's prime, and you get it. They're very inexpensive.
Frames are cheap.
Frames are cheap. And
the expensive part is the flight controllers and the motors.
Motors, ESCs, right. Speaking of the motors and the ESCs, the motors that I would suggest for this are the HD450. They're 2212 13-turn motors from Ready to Fly Quads. Again, this is a site that I like. The Paul Baxter is absolutely awesome. These go for about $18 a pop. But they're nice because they're 980 kV, so it's not, it's designed for big props. You can spin this with either 10-inch props or 8-inch props. If you're going to use a 4S battery, which delivers more voltage like I do, then you use the 8-inch props. If you're going to use a 3S battery, like you use on the 250, then you use the 10-inch props. And we had this discussion when we talked about motors and props.
Yeah.
The electronic speed controllers, I would suggest 30 amp, again from Ready to Fly Quads. These are the F30 Fire Red Series Simon K flashed rapid ESCs. These are $10 a pop, so it's going to cost you $40 for the set. You can't go wrong with these. These are just solid. They respond incredibly quickly, super high quality.
Yeah, they look nice.
Yeah. The flight controller. I've got a KK 2.15 on this, and that's just so I can dial in the settings in the field. However, I'm going to be replacing this. So the flight controller that I would suggest is actually the Flip MWC 1.5. Again, this is from Ready to Fly Quads. You can get this thing for $15.
Oh yeah, that's the really cool one where you can
the
plug it
telemetry.
into the computer and see the telemetry.
Very well-made controller, very inexpensive. You know, why not? And then you also might want a power distribution board. It's basically just a little piece of fiberglass that has some copper traces on it. This is a $1.99. It leads to some nice, neat wiring. There are people who skip the power distribution boards altogether and just wire everything in a harness.
Okay, yeah, I see you have one on here, but you're. Oh no, you are using it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm using it. I got it in there.
Okay, cool.
Now here's the nice thing. All of those parts totaled are about $145. Now you will still need a receiver, a radio, so a receiver transmitter. You will still need a battery, but you're going to choose what battery you want. Do you want a 3S or a 4S battery? I would recommend maybe a 2200 milliamp hour or
I was going to say, how does it balance out with the GoPro on it?
Well, see, remember we talked about this before, which is my center of gravity is right here. It's at the flight controller. So right now I'm a little bit tail heavy, but that's only because there's no GoPro in the casing.
Right.
When I put the GoPro in here, it will balance out, and if it doesn't, I can move this battery. It's actually on a Velcro pad. I can move it forward and back
till you get that balance point.
Till I get my balance point. Right.
Cool.
Now the other thing that you will also have to get on this is a charger. So don't forget that. But as we've mentioned several times, once you get a transmitter you like, once you get a battery setup that you like, you can build more frames, more quads, without having to rebuy a transmitter or rebuy a battery charger. Which is it significantly cuts down the price if you intend to stay in the hobby.
Also, would you recommend, if you're going to be buying these batteries, getting those the packs, the LiPo protection pack thing that you throw them into?
Yeah, don't do without a LiPo safety bag.
Yes. Yeah, we've got a couple of those downstairs, and we make sure to throw all the batteries in there.
Just because it's a good habit. You also will need to buy props. I'm using carbon fiber on this model. You don't have to use carbon fiber. You can go with nylon. There are some much more less expensive models.
But they look cool.
They look cool, and they actually balance a little bit better. At least in my experience, I've been able to balance these much more easily than some of the others. But carbon fiber is also very ouchy, so be careful.
Right. And how much more expensive are those compared to the plastic ones?
They can be pricey. They can be, I mean, they're definitely more expensive than the plastics.
I would say fly around until you're really comfortable and not going to crash, and then get the carbon, because we had the carbon fiber ones on the DJI,
Shattered.
and they splintered.
Yeah, a plastic prop will take damage much better than a carbon fiber prop.
Cool.
Although your goal should be not to damage them at all. Just saying.
It happens.
Okay. Now, folks, we've got a special occasion because
episode 123.
Oh, slow on the draw. Nice.
He's doing a bunch of other stuff back there.
But because it's episode 123, we do have the much promised first flight video. We're going to show you the last steps to take your 250 class that we've been building up over the last couple of weeks and take it outside and put it in the air. So, Alex, without further ado, because it's episode 123.
Nice try.
In the last edition of Project Quad, we assembled the airframe, wired our electronics, tested the radio, set the proper rotation of our motors, and calibrated the ESCs. Today, we've got one last step before we can take our quad on its maiden flight, configuring the flight controller. Unlike most other controllers, the KK 2.1.5 has its own screen, meaning that you don't have to connect it to a laptop or mobile device to change settings. As you grow more comfortable with flying and dialing in your configuration, you can move to more feature-filled flight controllers like my personal favorite, the Flip MWC. But for the novice, there's nothing like the KK's ability to let you tweak your flight characteristics in the field with no extra gear. Power up your quad, and the KK board should be at its safe screen. The 4 buttons below the screen from left to right are back, up, down, and enter. Hit enter to drop into the menu. The first step is to load the proper motor layout. This tells the controller how many motors it has to use and what their positions are relative to the controller. Use the down key to navigate to Load Motor Layout and hit Enter. You'll see a menu of preloaded configurations that include single and dual rotor helicopters, tricopters, septicopters, octocopters, plus mode quads, and of course, our X mode configuration quadcopter. Navigate to Quadcopter X mode and hit Enter. You'll be asked to confirm your decision and hit Yes. The screen should change to show the motor layout, including the required motor rotation. If you followed our tutorial in the last Project Quad segment, then your quad will match the on-screen layout. But this is an excellent reference screen if you ever need to reassemble your quad. Next, we need to configure the onboard accelerometers. Navigate to ACC calibration and hit enter. Make sure that your quad is on a solid, level surface and that it's free from vibration. Hit continue, then don't touch the quad again until calibration is complete. Now we want to configure the self-level control. Navigate to Mode Settings and hit enter. The first entry should be labeled self-level and it should read AUX or auxiliary. This means that you can use an auxiliary channel on your transmitter to turn the KK self-leveling feature on and off at will. You can also use stick and activate or deactivate the self-level with a stick command, but I don't recommend it unless you only have 4 channels. If you wired your quad as specified in the last Project Quad segment, then channel 5 should be the on-off switch for self-leveling. If you're using the FlySky T6 transmitter and you want to reassign self-leveling to a more convenient input, then watch our segment on transmitters. The last setting we want to configure is the auto level itself. Navigate to self-level and hit enter. For most, the default value should work fine on a 250 class quad, but I like to turn down my P gains to between 30 and 60. The P gain will regulate how quickly the controller will try to level the craft, and too high of a P gain can cause oscillation, as the craft constantly overcorrects its level. Before we get into the air, let's do a quick check of our handiwork to make sure that the quad will respond as we think it will. Put your quad on a level surface and turn on your transmitter. Connect the battery to the ESCs and verify that the KK has booted into safe mode. Position yourself so that you are behind and above your quad, with the front of the craft pointing away from you. Now arm the controller by moving the throttle to 0 and pushing the stick to the right. You should hear a beep and see the arming light turn on. Toggle your auxiliary channel number 5 and see if the self-level turns on and off. You'll want self-leveling off for the following test. Take a few step backs, then give your quad about 20% throttle. You want to spin up the props but not take off. If you start to leave the ground, reduce throttle. Look for any uncontrolled vibrations or wobbles. Now move the right stick forward slightly until you see the craft start to tilt forward. Be gentle. You're just checking input. You don't want to flip your quad. Move the stick back and see if it rocks back on the landing gear. Now move to the left and to the right, checking to see if the quad leans in that direction. Lastly, move the left stick right and left to see if the craft will rotate in the right direction. If any of these inputs fail to cause the expected action, then you need to check your transmitter for reversed channels and your wiring for incorrect connections. Run through the last Project Quad segment again and check those connections. When you're done testing inputs, move the throttle to 0% and to the left. This will disarm the controller. Make sure to do this before you ever pick up your quad, otherwise you risk the prop spinning up if you tap the throttle. Once you're satisfied that the quad will respond properly to your inputs while in the air, it's time for your maiden flight. Confirm that your KK is on in the safe screen, then flip your auxiliary channel to turn self-leveling on. Once again, stand a safe distance behind your quad, with the front of the craft pointed away from you, arm the craft, and bring the throttle to about 30%. Let it spin up, then continue to advance the throttle until your craft leaves the ground. Your controller should keep the craft level as it lifts off. If it starts to wobble, oscillate, or careen out of control, chop the throttle. You can fix your quad. You may not be able to fix what it runs into. Assuming that there were no problems, let the quad rise until it's about 4 feet off the ground. Modulate your throttle to keep your quad at the same altitude while you use the right stick to hold position. You want to use small, constant inputs. Always be adjusting the flight of your quad without large control inputs. You've probably just encountered the first challenge to flying, the ground effect. The prop wash creates a cushion of turbulence near the ground. The bigger the props, the bigger the cushion. As a result, the air near the ground is choppy and unpredictable. You'll get a much smoother ride once you're above that layer, about 4 feet. Hover. A lot. Use an entire battery or 12 to practice hovering. You can vary your altitude, but always keep it low enough so that chopping the throttle won't cause extensive damage. Note that your quad will be unstable if you try to bring it straight down. That's because it has to fly through the turbulence it's creating. If you want a smoother flight, always descend while moving. It doesn't feel like much, but you're learning the characteristics of your new quad, and your brain is learning how to control your fingers to keep the quad where you want it to be. At first, you should be practicing 3 inputs: elevator, aileron, and throttle. The yaw or rudder should be left alone. Keep the quad's rear pointed towards you, and don't worry about rotating your craft just yet. Mix up the hovering practice with an occasional landing. Landing sounds easy, but the problem is the aforementioned ground effect. As your quad gets closer to landing, it will want to hover just a few inches off the ground, even as you reduce throttle. Pick your landing spot, reduce throttle until you hit the ground effect, correct your angle to keep your landing spot, then quickly reduce throttle to drop through the ground effect. Once you've mastered takeoff, hovering, and landing, it's time to try something a bit more challenging: walking the quad. Find yourself an open stretch of field or a wide abandoned street. Take off and place your quad in front of you about 5 feet away. Now start walking and keep your quad at the same distance from you as you walk. You're training your brain to handle multi-vector spatial reasoning. In other words, your brain is learning how to adjust the flight of your quad while you are moving. Use another dozen or so batteries to walk the quad. Once you're comfortable with basic movement, practice moving your quad from left to right, all the while keeping it within your practice radius. When that becomes easy, practice rotating the quad a complete 360 degrees as quickly as you can while it's stationary, making sure to manage the throttle to keep altitude. Once walking the quad becomes second nature, it's time to move on to the circle of death. Okay, it's not really a circle of death, but it's a good way to add yaw into your practice. You've been using the throttle, elevator, and aileron in your practice thus far, but we haven't actively rotated the craft while moving. The circle changes that. Take off and push your quad about 10 feet from you. Now, without moving from the spot you're standing in, start to slowly turn your body while keeping the quad in front of you, with its rear always facing or right to keep the quad in front of you, and forward and back to keep it a safe distance from your body. On the left stick, you'll need to use the yaw to slowly rotate the craft in order to keep its rear pointed at you, and the throttle to hold altitude as you turn. Start slowly, then pick up the pace as you get accustomed to the control combination. If you start to get overwhelmed, stop your rotation and reset the quad a safe distance before starting again. Once you're comfortable with these exercises, you can move on to more challenging flight.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's too fantastic to believe. Nobody will believe the invasion of the Saucermen.
That looks like a piece of propeller.
Yeah, I have extras. And
Yeah, I
that,
have
folks, is
extras.
why you buy extra props.
Yeah, it looks like you might have broke something
No
there.
props were harmed in the making of that video.
Except for that last
a
one.
lot of them. Actually.
Very cool.
Now, here's the thing. There are a few things that people disagree on training. And for example, the flight test guys, who we're going to have over on Padres Corner in a bit, they will tell you to never chop power. I kind of train inside of a city, even though I do have a field to myself. And so my thing is, if I'm training and I'm keeping it low, I'm keeping it within 4 or 5 feet. If it starts to get away from me, I will chop power.
Yeah.
Just because there's more things that I can damage with the quad than the quad will be damaged by dropping 4 feet.
Right, and for me, when tell which direction it was going, and like beads of sweat were coming down, it's like, don't chop the throttle, don't.
Chopping the power becomes no longer an option.
Right.
Because once you chop power, you lose all control of your quad. You have no attitude control, altitude control, it's all gone. So just remember this, if you start to get into trouble, have a checklist that you can run through really quickly in your head to slow things down. Because what you want is you want to give your brain time to catch up. And it makes it worse. And now your brain's just going, ah, ah, and you just chop.
Yeah, I went back over my GoPro footage, and it felt like, for me, it felt like it was forever. But the GoPro footage, it goes pretty, it was like 5 seconds.
Especially confidence on the orientation. So what happens perspective and your control inputs.
100% comfortable with this, but it's still a pretty big jump to this. And I would like to get a feel for it before I turn off all the computer aids.
It will do horizon, which essentially will let you go all acrobatic. So it's like flying. I've got I just flip a switch and it turns off all the self-level assist.
I feel like there should be a little sound bite. It should be like a big red button.
Yeah, it should be. It's easy.
Yeah, that was not easy.
But the big thing that flies like one of the big ones.
It's the only one that I can fly into Burke without him, coming to hurt.
Go up to one of these, and above all else, just use your head. Don't be like those DJI, for the ones that are like, we're flying through Chicago, and then they say, oh, well, we couldn't have known that the signal would cut.
Its license, I don't want to have to have one for flying my quad.
So stop messing it up. Do it after episode. We're gonna have for
the
year. Of the year, definitely of the year. We've got another arc, a big arc coming up, because we've got to go into some of the more advanced topics. Once we start getting up to these 6, 7, 8 hour systems, we're going to show you about some of the more cool things you can do with acro mode. So if you want to learn, we're also doing builds. We're going to build a tricopter.
Oh, yeah.
We're building a junk copter. We're actually a game of drones that make a practically indestructible quadcopter. So hopefully we'll get our hands on that tomorrow. We are actually going to show you some of the cool things you can do to a SEMA.
I think we figured that one out.
We got that.
Yeah. Santa came early this year. I was expecting my motor to come in January 15th. It came back like 2 days ago, so I was happy about that. But replaced them
as far as you want to go. Really.
Yes, absolutely.
Because then it's just gone.
But we should run a test. We should go out to the football field and see how far.
I'm telling you should come over to SI, because especially on the weekends, /soccer fields to myself.
Yeah, that was a good practice space that you had there. Yeah. So hopefully other people are.
Come on down to St. Ignatius High School. When you get stopped by the security guards, just tell them that Father Robert said it was okay. It will probably.
Oh, you're one of those quad guys, huh? Boy.
No, that's not going to work. And once a week, I have someone come over and like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I live here.
Please, it's fine. I'm just having fun. I know, as you have like the GoPro strapped to your forehead, a GoPro here, your controller, and you're just flying around.
Well, you weren't much help, because I had the GoPro here to show the transmitter. I had the GoPro in my head, and you're like, I just want to film you with that setup.
Right.
You're going to look ridiculous.
You look so cool.
Yeah. But you know what? We do it for you. And you know why? Because this is a special episode. It's episode 123.
See, I say 123. You say 123.
Whatever. Okay. Now we've got a parting shot. The parting shot of the year. We've been wanting to do this
for like
forever.
The last 4 or 5 shows. We've had it on the rundown.
We're always running long, so we always cut it. But this is something that you've probably seen on the interwebs. This is a French writer who, Francois Guissy Group, who showing off his exotic thermo-engineering bike. Alex, can you go ahead and just roll that clip?
Oh, he's getting prepared, and you can see his feet dangling up.
Again, you need the microphone in the head.
Holding on for dear life.
Now, he went 333 kilometers per hour, or 207 miles per hour, in 4.8 seconds. It uses a hydrogen peroxide rocket. It has 3 thrusters from the combustion chamber, so as the hydrogen peroxide decomposes, all that thrust gets converted into just a big-ass whoosh out the back. Provides 4.5 kilonewtons of thrust, or the equivalent of 560 horsepower.
Strapped to something that probably weighs less than 100 pounds.
Exactly. And now he was racing a Ferrari in one of these videos, and like the Ferrari was behind him by 30 seconds.
Oh,
it was,
yeah.
It was ridiculous.
Straight line, no match.
Now, this is probably not the best way to get around. And there have
But
been
if you're in a hurry.
Yeah, if you're in a hurry, this will get you there. There have been people in the chat room who are suggesting we could do a hydrogen peroxide powered quadcopter.
Oh, God. We have been toying with the idea of strapping a rocket to one of the quads.
It doesn't help if the quadcopter goes out of sight in under a second.
It's just gone.
It's
yeah,
just-
and
it's hard to
you know the
control.
propellers get ripped off in the process.
And it goes into space.
Yeah, that wasn't a race. That was just him flying very, very low.
I know, they're like, he's a rider. At that point, you're not a rider. You're just kind of hanging on for dear life. Because he wasn't strapped in. I mean, if he let go of the bars, that would have hurt.
That's crazy.
Look at it's like my Huffy.
Right.
He put
Like-
a rocket on the back of a Schwinn.
Jeez.
And folks, that just shows you that, yes, French people are crazy.
But I am more than happy to let him try that
Yes,
and see
a lot. And
watch
just
it.
record it for my delight.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
fantastic. Folks, don't forget that you can always get all of our show notes at our show page. Just go where?
twit.tv/KH, and that's where all our past episodes live, and you're going to want to check those out if you've been following any of the quad stuff. You can also subscribe, and we post all the links and show notes that you will need to, check out after you watch one of these episodes, because we do a lot of stuff.
We do a lot of stuff. We have a lot of different, I mean, people have been saying we're all quads. Quadcopters have been accounting for about 25% of the material the last 11 episodes. There's a lot of other projects that we do simultaneously, and the show notes are in there, so if you want to do it, you could do the step-by-step. Also, the parts lists for the quads are in those show notes. So if you want to build your own rather than buying a kit, you can do that too. Don't forget that you can also get us at our Google Plus page. That's gplus.to/twitkh.
Yep.
Or just go to Google Plus and look for Know How. It's a large community and it's a vibrant community. I love those people.
Great questions. That's where we get all our feedback questions from. And then people post their projects and stuff. And speaking of fans, I have to shout out, we did get a Christmas card this year. So this is from Molly.
Thank you, Molly.
I think it's a Christmas card, so we appreciate that. And it was very sweet.
We wanted to show it off on this special episode individually on Twitter. You can find me at twitter.com/PadreSJ. That's at PadreSJ. If you follow me, you'll find out what we're going to be doing for every episode of Know How and all the other shows I do on the Twit TV network. That includes This Week in Enterprise Tech, Padres Corner, and Coding 101. Where are you found again?
On Twitter, I'm at Cranky_Hippo.
You got to follow him because he also has corgi butt.
I think I also did post something during the middle of the show. I was just double checking to make sure it was there. So if you follow me on Twitter, you can see all the behind the scenes stuff that Padre's doing when we're doing the pre-record stuff.
Yeah. Alex, there we go, ANELF3. But follow him because he was the mastermind behind episode 123.
I'm sorry, I wouldn't be surprised.
Happy New Year.
2, 1.
Not a single one of those is a quadcopter.